Hey everyone, how are you guys doing today? My name is Marcel Prasetya. I'm one of the developers from the Google Wave team. I'm working primarily on the Java Robot API. So this is just a breakdown of my presentation today. First, I'm gonna give you a brief introduction about Robot and the architecture of our Robot API. I'm also gonna talk about the events and operation systems. So basically, it's things that the robot receives and send back to our server. And we're going to also talk about the different view objects that we have, text view, form view, and gadget view that allows you to read and modify wave content in a simpler way. And finally, and hopefully this will be the most interesting part, I'm going to walk you through a short tutorial on how to make robot from scratch. So robot is a robotic participant in a wave that can basically read and write wave content inside a wave in which it participates. There are several classes of robots, and please keep in mind this is not a comprehensive list, but we just want to give you an idea on like what kind of things that robot can do. Um, First one is we have content assist robot. One example of this will be Completely, that will basically autocomplete your sentence in Google Wave using Google search. We have Smiley that Dave demo. Second class is data synchronization robot. A good example of this will be Buggy, which is a robot that synchronizes your wave content with an issue tracking system. We also have Tweety that synchronizes your wave content with Twitter. Then we also have a multi-wave applications robot. I don't know whether if you guys have seen the Google I/O presentation, we demo one robot called Poly that will basically let you create and distribute polls into different waves. We also have a bot called BlockBot that lets you manage blocks in Wave. Last class of robot that we have is a conversational type of robot. One good example of this is Eliza. So basically, if you're lonely and if you're looking for someone to talk to, just add Eliza to your wave and you'll be happy. Like Dave mentioned, temporarily robot can only run in Google App Engine. We're going to lift up this restriction in the future. Um, if a normal user has a participant ID in the form of your username at wavesandbox.com, and robot will have a participant ID in the form of the application ID of your App Engine account at appspot.com. Now let's talk about the architecture of our robot API. So the heart of our robot API is the server in the middle called robot proxy. So that's basically a server that listens for updates coming from the Wave server and package it up in a JSON format and broadcast that into your robot running on App Engine. That robot proxy is also responsible for receiving operations coming from your robot and push that over to Wave server. And so the communication format is over HTTP protocol, and the data that we send back and forth is in the form of JSON. Okay, now let's talk about events and operations. So events is basically something that robot subscribes to, and these are things that are broadcasted by robot proxy. I've listed some examples of events that are commonly used. First one is wavelet self-added that gets triggered whenever a robot gets added to a wave. We have a blip submitted event that gets triggered when a blip is submitted. We have document change event that gets triggered when content of a blip has changed. And we also have many different events that you can see from our API page. So whenever robot receives those events, it typically responds with a series of operations that will be received by robot proxy, and then we'll transfer that to Wave server. We have some sample. I have some sample operations here. First one is wavelet append blip that allows you to create a new blip in a wave, and we have wavelet set title that lets you adjust the title of the wave, and we have document insert, document delete, document set annotation, and so on. Now let's talk about the view objects. Wave is basically an XML document with textual and non-textual content. And then to provide you an abstraction on top of the gory details of our XML schema, we provide some convenient objects called a view object that basically lets you manage your wave content in a simpler way. And well, first one, we have text view that allows you to manage, allows robot to manage textual content. We have methods such as like append, replace, append style text, delete, and so on. We also have a form view object that lets you manage your form elements like buttons, input text, text area, radio button, and stuff like that. Yeah?
We're going to do questions this panel.
Okay. So the last view that we have is a gadget view that allows you to manage your gadget from your robot. It can set a field, like set a state and get a state of robot, and add gadget, delete gadget. All right, so enough theory. So I'm gonna give you a short tutorial on how to make robot from scratch. So basically today we're gonna build a robot called Tweets, which is basically a simplified version of Tweety. Since I'm lazy and we're running out of time. Basically, this robot will not have a login form. The username and password will be hard-coded inside the code. I'm going to use my Twitter test account. There are two use cases that this robot will support. First one is whenever it receives a wavelet self-added event, it will fetches a list of tweets from Twitter. And the second use case is whenever it receives a blip submitted event, it will submit the content of that blip to Twitter as a tweet. All right. How many of you guys have used Google App Engine or have built application on top of it? Okay, so great. So to build a robot, first thing that you need to do is you need to have an app ID. So you do that by going to the App Engine dashboard. And then you can use an existing application or you can create a new application. So in this case, I've registered an application ID called Tweets Wave that I've registered a few days ago, and I'm going to use that for today's demo. So the second thing after we set up an application ID is we need to download the client library. So first you need to go to our the API's website, code.google.com/API/wave, and then clicks on the robot link, and then click on download. So you need to download these three jars that we have. First one is our client library, and the next two are the dependencies that the library depends on. Okay. Right, so now I'm going to build a Java robot using Eclipse. I'm going to bring up Eclipse here. I highly recommend that you use the Google App Engine or the Google plugin for Eclipse. It has a seamless integration with App Engine and Google Web Toolkit that allows you basically to create and deploy your App Engine project from within Eclipse seamlessly. So I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call it Tweets and put it in a Tweets package. And since I'm not going to use Google Web Toolkit, I'm going to uncheck this part right here. Okay, now I have my new project. Next thing is I need to copy the jars that I've downloaded into my project. So I need to put that in my lib directory inside the webinf directory. Paste that. I'm going to open Eclipse again, and now I'm going to import those jars into my project. Oh, first I have to refresh. Okay, I'm gonna select the 3 jars that I've downloaded and import it here. Okay, so now I think we're ready to start building a robot now. So first, to build robot, you need to create a robot configuration file called the capabilities.xml file. So I'm gonna put that inside a directory called _wave. And then I'm gonna make a file called capabilities.xml. To save some time, I'm just gonna copy and paste from the existing example. So this is a robot configuration file. It basically tells a robot proxy what kind of events that this robot is interested in. So in this example, I've listed 2 events. So basically this robot will receive a wavelet self-added event and also a blip submitted event from robot proxy. Okay, so now we have the configuration file. Now let's start implementing the servlet that will receive the request coming from robot proxy. So App Engine creates this servlet for you, but I'm gonna change that. As part of the client library, we provide an abstract servlet called abstract robot servlet that provides some convenient methods for you to serialize and deserialize events and operations to and from JSON. So in a typical robot, you just need to extend that abstract robot servlet and then override this one method called process events. So this is basically the main processing loop that will receive all incoming events from robot proxy. Okay, so now we're ready to implement the first use case. So what we want to do is when the robot gets added, we want to fetch a list of tweets, right? So first we check from using the bundle, robot message bundle. I'm going to rename this into bundle. So first we want to check whether this is a self-added event or not. If it is, then I'm going to fetch a list of tweets from Twitter. Fetch. So to speed things up a little bit, I've created this class called Twitter Service yesterday that basically handles the interaction with Twitter. It provides 2 utility functions. So one is to fetch tweets and 2 is to post tweets to Twitter. I'm hard coding my username and password in there. Okay, so now we have a list of tweets from Twitter. What we want to do now is we want to post those tweets as blips. So we're going to iterate over the tweets. And for each one of them, we're going to make a blip. So notice here, I'm calling from the bundle. I'm calling the get wavelet event that will return me the wavelet. And then from that wavelet, I'm calling the append blip method that returns me a new blip. So right now, this blip is empty. So what I want to do is I want to get the text view by calling the get document method. And then I want to call append method to append the tweet. Okay, so I think we're done with the first use case. Now let's deal with the second use case. So what we want to do is that we want to post blip content as tweet to Twitter. So first we need to check the bundle, whether we have any blip submitted events or not. Okay, and for each blip submitted event, we want to get the actual blip. And then from there, we want to get the text view by calling the get document, and then we want to get the content of the text view by calling get text. And then we want to post this to Twitter. I'm going to use my friendly Twitter service class again, called tweet method. Okay, so now I think we have the servlet ready. One thing is we need to check the web deployment descriptor file. I'm going to open it up. This is the web XML file. So one thing is that we need to map the servlet that we just created into a specific URL, specific path. So that is _wave /robot/JSON RPC. So that's the convention that we have. Robot proxy will ping your robot at that specific path. That's very important. And I don't need the last one. Okay. And then, so we have a configuration file. We have a servlet. And then the last thing I want to create is the extension file to install the robot into Wave. So I'm going to copy over this file, extension, into my _wave directory. Just to quickly go over this. So the name of this extension is Tweeds, and has this thumbnail that got from tweedywave.appspot.com. And then author is myself. And then this has a create new wave hook. And then whenever you click on that create new wave button, it will make a new wave with tweedswave@appspot.com as the participant. Okay, so before I deploy this to Google App Engine, I want to try to run this locally and see. Oh, address is already used. Okay, so I have my server running locally. A few things that I want to check is first whether I can access the capabilities.xml. Okay, I have that. And then second thing that I want to check is whether I can access the extension file. And the last thing I want to check is whether I can ping the wave robot JSON RPC path or not. So good, we don't get a 404. So now we have all implemented locally. We wanted to deploy this to Google App Engine. So first you need to open your App Engine description file, appengine-web.xml. Now we need to specify the application ID that we've registered before. So in this case, I'm going to use tweets-wave right here. And then I'm going to click on this App Engine icon to deploy this. Uploading. Okay, successful. Okay, now I've deployed that. So I want to check a few things again. First, I want to check whether I can access my extension file. Good. And then also the capabilities .xml file. Okay, cool. Now I'm gonna go to Wave Sandbox and try out our new robot. Okay, so first I'm gonna create a new wave and install my extension. You can install an extension on any wave that you have, or you can make a new one. It's really up to you. Extension installer, and then I'm gonna copy and paste my extension manifest file. Oops, shiny. Okay, gonna refresh. All right, so that's my extension. Tweets, and then description is create a new wave filled with tweets. So I'm gonna click install here, and then now you see the down arrow here next to the new wave, and then I can create a new wave now. So twave stands for Twitter wave. Just like that. Lars coined that term, and I hope this works. I have this uploading. It doesn't. Oh, there you go. Okay, so the robot, whenever it gets added to a wave, like I told you before, so it will fetch a list of tweets from Twitter. So let's verify that. So I'm logged into Twitter here with my test account called Cocobot, and I have two tweets here. What a beautiful day and hello Twitter. So we can verify that I have the exact same tweets inside Wave. So that was the first use case that Tweet supports. Now let's try out the second use case. Hacking at Google Wave Hackathon. If I can spell. So after I submit this blip, we should be able to see that on Twitter. So I'm gonna go back to my Twitter page here. I'm gonna and refresh. It doesn't show up. There you go. Hacking at Google Wave Hackathon. As you notice here that the content of the root blip is empty. So I'm gonna update the code a little bit to put some text in there. So I'm gonna go back to this if statement, and then I will say from the bundle, I'm gonna get the wavelet, and from there I'm gonna get the root blip, and then get the text view of the root blip, and then append the text. My tweets. And then I'm gonna deploy that again to App Engine. Now let's try that again. Wave. Okay, for some reason it's running kind of slow. But as you can see now, it updates the content of the root blip with the text that I just added, which is my tweets. Yeah, so I don't know what happens with the what's that? I'm gonna try it one more time. Oh, there you go. Cool. Phew. With that, so that concludes my presentation. If you guys have any questions for us, we'll be hanging around for the panel. And happy hacking.
Sorry, I move a little slower than I used to.